Prince Edward, known for his steadfast commitment to royal duties, has taken a surprising step back from Buckingham Palace, sparking widespread speculation. His decision signals a possible shift in his role within the monarchy, raising questions about its alignment with King Charles III's modern vision or deeper personal motivations. As the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Edward has long maintained a low-profile approach to royal life. This unexpected move, however, marks a turning point, highlighting the ongoing balance between tradition and the evolving demands of the modern monarchy. Many people have asked, why now? After hearing this news, it seems like there may be a big problem within the royal family. Is this a way for them to gain personal freedom from the stress of public life? Understanding this decision requires a closer look at Edward's life, marked by personal challenges and a quiet dedication to royal responsibilities. Edward was born at Buckingham Palace on March 10, 1964. He is the last of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip's 4 children. People have often considered Edward the quietest of his siblings compared to Charles and Andrew, a perception that has largely been true throughout his life. His early years were shaped by the dual weights of luxury and expectations. Growing up in the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, the Queen and Prince Philip, despite their busy royal schedules, ensured their children had moments of familial connection. This allowed Edward to spend evenings in the private areas of the palace and enjoy games in the royal gardens. However, even in these times, the rules of behavior were strictly upheld. Edward's childhood was also influenced by his relationships with his siblings, particularly Andrew, who was 4 years older. Andrew's loud and competitive nature contrasted with Edward's more private demeanor and preference for quiet activities like reading and acting. These differences often led to conflicts. Ingrid Seward, a royal biographer, noted that Andrew's bossiness sometimes made Edward feel overlooked. Despite these challenges, these early experiences helped Edward develop resilience and a determination to carve out his own path. As Edward grew older, education played a pivotal role in his development. He attended Scotland's Gordonstoun School, known for its rigorous curriculum and focus on character building, following in the footsteps of his father and uncles. Although the experience was challenging, Edward excelled, particularly in acting and sports, demonstrating his ability to perform under pressure, a skill that would serve him well in the future. After graduating from Gordonstoun, Edward attended Cambridge University, earning a degree in history. Despite modest academic achievements, his time at Cambridge reflected his intelligence and determination. Even then, it was evident that Edward might not follow a traditional royal path. In 1982, Edward faced a major decision, joining the military, a tradition in his family. He enlisted with the Royal Marines, aligning with the family's strong military ties. However, the rigorous training and high expectations proved challenging. After 4 months, Edward made the difficult choice to leave, a decision that disappointed Prince Philip and attracted public criticism. Yet, this moment marked a significant turning point, distinguishing Edward from his siblings. He began to pursue his interests in arts and media, breaking away from traditional royal roles. Edward's decision to explore his passions was both bold and unconventional. While his brothers adhered to established royal traditions, Edward sought personal fulfillment in creative fields. He launched Ardent Productions, a TV production company, in 1993, signaling his commitment to carving out a unique identity. Alongside this, Edward took on increasing public roles, showcasing his dedication to causes such as youth empowerment and heritage preservation. His efforts reinforced the values of duty and service instilled by his parents. In recent years, Edward's responsibilities have grown, particularly after Prince Philip's passing in 2021. As the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward has taken on numerous duties, including overseeing the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, a global initiative promoting youth development. His work demonstrates a balance between upholding tradition and embracing modernity. However, the pressures of public life and the monarchy's evolving role continue to weigh on Edward. His decision to step back from Buckingham Palace reflects not a rejection of duty, but a desire to achieve a sustainable balance between personal and professional life. Edward's move also raises broader questions about the future of the monarchy. As King Charles III modernizes the institution, Edward's decision may signify deeper systemic challenges or adaptations to contemporary values. Time will reveal the true implications of Edward's choice, but one thing remains certain: his journey, marked by resilience and self-discovery, is far from over. High-quality dramas and films that would teach and motivate people. The launch of Ardent, on the other hand, was met with doubt. Many people in the business world thought Edward's project was just for show and didn't think he could succeed without his royal ties. Edward was determined to show his doubters they were wrong, which was a good thing. He played down his royal position by calling himself Edward Windsor on his business cards and telling Ardent that they wouldn't make any content about the royal family. Even with Edward's help, Ardent had a hard fight ahead of it. Early projects by the company, like a documentary on the exclusive sport of Real tennis, got mixed reviews. Critics jumped right on it, calling the content dull and the project itself proof of Edward's lack of knowledge about the entertainment business. Soon after, Ardent had money problems, and things got more difficult as the company tried to get back on its feet. After just a few years, it was clear that Edward's hopes of becoming famous in the media were not going to come true. The problems Edward had at Ardent were made worse by the fact that he was both a royal and a private company owner. While his royal status let people in, it also made people look at him more closely. The media loved it when people made mistakes and turned even small problems into front-page stories. Some members of the royal family, like Prince Philip, were said to be worried that Edward's move into show business was lowering the monarchy's status. Philip, who is known for being honest, is said to have asked Edward why he didn't just leave TV to the pros and take the royalties. During this time, Edward was having problems in more than just his work life. For himself, he was starting a relationship with Sophie Rhys-Jones, a PR professional he met at a charity event. Their relationship grew slowly out of the public eye, but when word got out that they were dating, the press swooped in. Edward didn't want Sophie to be seen by the press because he was afraid of the attention that had been paid to other royal relationships. However, the media's interest in their relationship grew, which made things more difficult. In the future, Edward started to learn hard lessons about being strong and figuring out who he is through these events. His decision to leave the Royal Marines was a sign of his independence, but his problems with Ardent and the media showed how hard it was to really leave the royal standards behind. Edward was still tied to the throne, for better or worse, even though he wanted to be an artist. At the end of the 1990s, Edward's life was in a tough spot. His hopes of becoming a TV producer had failed, but his personal life was growing. His relationship with Sophie, which was based on mutual respect and shared values, kept him stable while his business was going through rough patches. Edward started to understand that the next steps in both his personal and professional lives would require not only strength but also a new view of what it meant to be a royal in the modern world. It was 1999, and Prince Edward was ready to make a big change in his personal life. His friendship with Sophie Rhys-Jones had been growing over the past 6 years, and they recently said they were getting married. People liked Sophie's down-to-earth personality and professional background, so they were happy to hear the news. Sophie, a public relations executive with a sharp mind and a strong work ethic, was thought to be the right match for Edward because she was warm and calm, which went well with his shy personality. Their wedding would not only start a new era for Edward but also change how the younger royals thought about marriage and public life. Edward and Sophie got married in a small wedding at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, on June 19, 1999. Unlike his brother's weddings, Edward and Sophie's wedding was more low-key, reflecting their desire for a more relaxed celebration. There were fewer people at the event, but it was still important. The couple said their vows in front of family and close friends, and many people said it was a heartfelt and real service. It's worth noting that Edward picked the title of Earl of Wessex instead of the traditional dukedom that royal sons get when they get married. Reports say that he got ideas from the character Lord Wessex in the movie Shakespeare in Love. This showed that he liked being unique and loved the arts. Following their wedding, Edward and Sophie moved into the large house at Bagshot Park to start their new life together. The couple found comfort in the house, which was rented to them by the Crown Estate. It gave them privacy and a sense of normalcy while they were busy with their royal tasks. Their 2 children, Lady Louise Windsor in 2003 and James, Viscount Severn, in 2007, were born. Over the years, as parents, Edward and Sophie were very dedicated to giving their kids as normal a life as possible, keeping them away from the heavy media attention that had often been a problem for older royals. behavior was very different from the high-profile dramas that usually dominated royal news, which added to the idea that they were a steady and stable part of the family. Even though Edward and Sophie had had some success, they were very aware of the problems that were still to come. The monarchy's future wasn't certain, arguments about what role it should play in modern society were still going strong. For Edward, these questions were very close to home. He knew more than most about how hard it was to be a royal because he had spent his whole life juggling public duty and private desire. He recently made choices, like leaving Buckingham Palace to spend more time with his family, that showed he wanted the kingdom to change without losing its core values. Edward kept his mind on the things that were most important to him as he thought about the future. One important part of his legacy that kept going was the Duke of Edinburgh's award. Through this program, he saw a way to respect his father's dream and leave his own mark, showing that he believed in the power of service and community to change lives. Edward's trip was a microcosm of the monarchy's larger problems and hopes. In many ways, his ability to change, to find a balance between custom and modernity, and to put truth over appearances showed how strong an institution was that had been through hundreds of years of change. As King Charles ruled, the royal family moved forward. Edward's story served as a lesson of how important quiet, steady leadership is in a world that often puts show over substance. The government changed over time, and Prince Edward's steady presence became an even bigger part of what it meant. His journey, full of personal struggles and professional growth, had made him ready to deal with the difficulties of a changing royal world. He recently made the choice to step back from Buckingham Palace and focus on family life at Bagshot Park. This did not mean that he was pulling away but rather that he was readjusting. Edward wasn't really leaving his royal tasks behind, he was just rethinking how to fit them into a life that balanced public service with his own needs. One of the most impressive things about Edward's job was that he could change things without losing sight of what the kingdom stood for. Edward's exit from Buckingham Palace was quiet and planned, unlike the dramatic goodbyes of other family members. This difference made his way of handling the complicated life of a royal clear. The departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle caused debate and disagreement around the world. However, Edward's move seemed more in line with King Charles's plan for a streamlined monarchy, a gradual shift that put more emphasis on efficiency and relevance over pomp and circumstance. A strong love for his family drove Edward to make the choices he did. The large, quiet fields of Bagshot Park had been a safe place for Edward, Sophie, and their 2 kids to go for a long time. For Edward, it was the balance he had been looking for his whole life, a place where he could do what was right for the crown while also getting closer to his family on a more personal level. Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex, had mostly grown up out of the public eye. This was because Edward and Sophie were determined to give them a safe and private upbringing. The way Edward handled his public duties showed how important this balance was to him. He cut back on some parts of his royal duties, but he never stopped caring about causes like the Duke of Edinburgh's award. Many of Edward's ideas were reflected in the program, which aimed to give young people power through personal growth and community service. For him, it wasn't just a project to leave behind, it was a living, changing thing that showed how important the monarchy's gifts are to society today and in the future. Sophie's help with this project was just as important. As the Duchess of Edinburgh, she became one of the most recognized members of the royal family and spoke out for causes that affected people all over the world. Her work to end needless blindness, fight for gender equality, and support survivors of sexual assault showed how powerful it could be to use her fame to make real changes. When Edward and Sophie were together, they showed a modern way to serve the royal family, one that put substance over show and teamwork over independence. But even though they had wins, the bigger problems the monarchy was facing were still very big. People didn't trust the royal family as much as they used to, and arguments about what role they should play in modern Britain kept heating up. For Edward, these questions were not just about ideas, they were very close to home. He knew that the future of the monarchy counted on its ability to change while staying true to its core values. This idea of honoring custom while welcoming change had been a big part of Edward's life, and it shaped every choice he made as a working royal. As King Charles III worked to strengthen the role of the crown, Edward's help became more and more important. He was a trusted partner in the king's attempts to bring the institution up to date. Because he was a quiet leader who was willing to take on responsibility, Edward's ability to connect with people on a personal level helped the government and the people, proving that royals could be both approachable and inspiring. The way Edward talked to young people may have shown this relatability the most. Edward stood out because he genuinely cared about other people. Whether he was visiting schools, going to Duke of Edinburgh's award events, or working with community groups, in these times, often when no one was watching, the prince showed that he wasn't just doing what he had to do, he was also living out his belief in the power of service and connection to change lives. Even with all he had done, Edward was very aware of how hard it was to be a prince. He couldn't get away from the weight of public expectation, the steady scrutiny of the media, and the pressures of upholding an institution that had been around for hundreds of years. He faced these problems, though, with the strength that comes from having done it before. Edward had learned to deal with problems with grace and drive, from the problems he faced in the Royal Marines as a young man to the criticism he faced while working for Ardent Productions. While the monarchy thought about the future, Edward's trip showed how adaptability and quiet persistence can make you strong over time. His ability to keep his promise to the crown, even when things went wrong in his personal and work life, showed how special he was to the royal family. At a time when the government was facing problems that had never been seen before, Edward's steady presence gave people a sense of security and continuity. Edward's story may have shown something more important about the modern monarchy, that it wasn't about how big or fancy it was, but how well it could connect with people on a personal level. Edward believed that the monarchy was important because it could inspire, serve, and change with the times. This connection was not just a plan for him, it was a deeply held belief. As Edward got used to this new part of his life, the question of what he would leave behind became more important. Would people remember him as a quiet reformer who worked hard to uphold the monarchy's ideals while also seeing the need for change, or would the more newsworthy acts of other members of the royal family make his work less important? Time would tell, but one thing was certain, Edward's trip had not been marked by big actions but by a steady dedication to duty, family, and service. In many ways, Edward's life was like the kingdom itself. It has deep roots in history but is always changing to meet the needs of the present. He showed the delicate balance between tradition and progress. By stepping back from Buckingham Palace and focusing on the Duke of Edinburgh's award, Edward had to find this balance in his personal and business life. It affected every part of his work and life. As the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward's place in the royal family would no doubt change over time. The things he did, both known and unknown, would always be a reminder of the ideals his parents taught him and the things he learned by living a royal life for so many years. Even though the monarchy's future was still unclear, Edward's journey showed how it could become an institution that is both rooted in service and aware of the needs of the people it serves. That's the end of today's video. If you've made it this far, be sure to watch more videos on the channel.